The Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu, says it wants decisive action on the Public Investment Corporation, that it won't stand idle and allow people involved in corruption related to VBS Bank to act with impunity, and that people who are implicated in corruption should step aside and make themselves unavailable to represent the ANC after the election. Its Central Executive Committee held a special one-day meeting that also focused on the economy and on plans for a strike against retrenchments. Cosatu says it will now hold a national strike next week to stop retrenchments. The President of Cosatu is Zingiswa Losi. Ms. Losi, good evening and thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Good evening and thank you for having me here.
Why are you going on strike?
We're going on strike because we are coming out of a job summit and an investment summit. And there are undertakings that were made there in terms of creating employment in this country. But out of that job summit, you'd understand that most of the companies, particularly in the mining industry and also in the retail, the banking sector, the employers have come out and said they are going to retrench workers. We're not sure whether this is a response to the national minimum wage that has been signed, but either way, you can't give an undertaking of creating employment in response to the crisis of 38% of the rate of unemployment in this country. And the very same business goes back and say, but we need to retrench now and then we shall employ you 1,000 jobs over 10 years. It does not make sense. Secondly, we're saying with a high rate of unemployment sitting at 38%, with people that are, we have 17 million people in South Africa that are on social welfare. The burden, once you retrench, goes to government. So how are you going to grow an economy that has millions of people that are seated at home not working? How are we going to help in terms on the growth of the economy in terms of paying taxes? So only those that are working would be able to contribute to the tax revenue in this country. So we're saying there's a contradiction there. And investment summit, the job summit, must be also protect jobs that are currently in existence.
Okay, I mean the argument, you know the argument that's going to come from your friends, the bosses. They're going to say that they're retrenching people because they have no choice. They're not making money. The economy is in a particular place where they're not able to make money employing the number of workers that they are now. I'm sure they'll use the phrase fourth industrial revolution in there as well. And they will say they're not retrenching because they want to, they have to. And now Cosatu is going to have a strike which will disrupt the businesses. The workers will go for a day or two without pay as well. So the question, let me put it to you like this. How does a strike stop retrenchments? Doesn't it actually increase the number of retrenchments?
It doesn't. It doesn't increase the number of retrenchments. You see, in this country, even before the democratic dispensation, one thing that we understand is that when we fail at the negotiating table, the only way to make employers to listen is to go out on a total shutdown. Workers, when they go out on strike, they understand very well the principle of no work, no pay, and they are prepared to take that for that particular day so that we're able to correct the ills that we're confronted with. And that's why we're saying Section 77 is for all workers. It does not only confine those that are organized under the Federation Cosatu. And we're saying to employers, if you are to retrench workers, there are protocols that must be followed. If you give Section 189A, then it means you must sit down with all of us, also labor representing workers there. We must first find alternatives to retrenchment. The fourth industrial revolution can never be an excuse for retrenching workers. We can never allow technology to replace a worker in this country with the kind of an economy that we are having, with the kind of a high rate of unemployment that we are faced with. So South Africa, we should not find ourselves in a situation where we would go and copy things that work in other countries and want to bring them and implement them here in South Africa. We are unique. We have our own different way that we must apply on how we're going to respond to the crisis that is facing our country. So we're saying to business, let us go back to the drawing table in each and every sector, just like it has happened at SABC. Because we're happy with what has happened at SABC. Now, there will no longer be retrenchments. Of course, what we are saying and what we're in agreement with is that let us do the skills audit and all of that. But even that, we must be able to say, here, because of the fourth industrial revolution, this is what our organization is going to look like, and therefore these are the kind of skills that are going to be needed. In anticipation of that and what you want to implement in your organization, you must then invest in your own employees by taking them to upskilling, reskilling, and giving them the required skills that the economy is going to need. So retrenchment will never be a solution. So we're saying we're prepared to take a knock, and we're saying business should be prepared to take a knock so that we can all go back and say what are the alternatives that we can put on the table.
So I appreciate what you're saying, and what you're saying is a very human thing about workers. A company boss will come to you and say, I'm making X profit, I'm just surviving. I've got a new thing, let's call it a computer. With that computer I can now employ 1 worker instead of 5. You're saying they must still keep the 5 workers and not bother with the 4th Industrial Revolution? I mean, that's how they'll term your argument.
No. What we're arguing is, we know we use technology ourselves as workers, okay? But what we're saying is, in the kind of an economy that we have in this country, you cannot, particularly big business, think that the solution is to replace workers. Because let me give you the worst case scenario. You want to accumulate profits, so you don't want workers that are going to go on sick leave, maternity leave, and all of that. You don't want to pay. You don't have to deal with labor laws. So you put workers at home. Everyone gets retrenched. You work with machines and 1 worker dealing with the entire production. So who's going to buy the products that you are producing? Because you need people that are working that will be able to have the buying power to still consume the products, because the machines are not going to consume the products that they are making. And secondly, you are then putting the burden to government. But we're also saying it would not grow the economy. So can we as South Africans be patriotic enough to say, what is it that is going to work for us as South Africans? Look at it and saying, but also we're saying to our government, because this is also what we want to see that President Ramaphosa must pronounce on the SONA, a focus on the small, medium enterprises. Because we need to build the local economy. We need to invest on local procurement. Big business are going to automate. That's fine. They're going to put machines and all of that. But the small, medium enterprises, they don't have the capacity to do that now. So they are the ones that we should be focusing on as government and putting a lot of investment there so that we know that they have a potential of creating jobs for the people in this country.
Can we talk about corruption for a moment? I mean, obviously you've been watching the Zondo Commission like everybody else. Do you believe there's now actually enough evidence for the National Prosecuting Authority to start charging people?
We may not say for certain that there's enough. But it is the responsibility of those institutions to start using what they have, what has been presented, to investigate. Things have been said, and we are saying as the Federation, we support these commissions because we marched on the 27th of September in 2017, calling for the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. Now we have it. We're not going to be intimidated to say we're going to back down, because some of our members are being killed. It's okay. We will continue in defense of the sovereignty of this country. And we are saying corruption erodes the moral fiber, but also takes away from the poorest in this country. So we're saying for those that are mentioned in the Zondo Commission, if you strongly believe that you are innocent, apply to go and meet Judge Zondo. Go and testify there, defend your integrity, defend yourself. In the absence of that, we are going to judge you as if you are guilty as alleged. So we're calling on them to go and testify there. At the same time, we're saying our institutions must begin to do their work now. The evidence that has been presented, they must take that, they must go and investigate, and they must start charging people. People will go and defend themselves in court.
Just on corruption, VBS is part of this as well, but one of the more important political processes that's underway at the moment is the ANC's list process. It'll determine who represents the African National Congress in the National Assembly and in the provincial legislatures. You're calling on people implicated in corruption to actually step away from that process, to not allow themselves to be on the list. That's quite a big call.
We are saying to them, the Nazareth conference of the ANC spoke about the integrity of the organization. And if you are a member of the African National Congress and you have been implicated, as things have been said by Agrizi, you have a responsibility to go to the organization and say, I have evidence contrary to what has been said, but also go to the Zondo Commission. Because in terms of the public posture and the public eye, people, if there is nothing that contradicts what has been said, will remain as the truth. Now we're saying to bring back the integrity to the organization, because we need to separate the ANC from individuals. Now, if you want to, because we're going for elections, we're not going to continue to campaign, and yet in the process of campaigning, we're defending individuals that cannot even come to the organization itself and present themselves. So we're saying there's a vetting process, but we're saying if you know that you may not survive the Zondo Commission, do the honorable thing and save the integrity of the organization and just pull back. Some of us who were on the list, not because we're implicated anywhere, but because we have some other responsibilities, we have said we are no longer available, and we appreciate that the branches have nominated ourselves to be on the list. So you can also do the same. Perhaps not because your name has been tainted, but because you think now you want to give an opportunity to others.
Zingiswa Losi, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Zingiswa Losi is the President of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu.